In this video, we're going to talk about how to import an Alembic into Houdini. I will assume that your pipeline can generate at least a 15 to 30 frame run-up of the creature back in its rest state. It doesn't have to be in its rest location, but it does have to be in a rest state. A great tool for this is Studio Library. It's free, it's available online. This will pose anything that you have. It will pose controllers, skeletons, etc. It has a Python API called emutils that you can use to save poses as well as call them back. Blender has its own posing tool if you're using Blender in your system, but I will not be going over that. When exporting from Maya, make sure that you include the UVs. In your options, if you scroll down to the bottom, make sure you strip any namespace and UVs. Include them so that when you pass your sim down the line, the geometry that you're actually returning will have UVs on them and they can have textures applied. In Houdini, drop down a geometry node, rename it to sim, then go inside and drop down an Alembic node. Let's go ahead and path it to the Alembic that you originally have as part of the project files. I want you to use version 23 to begin with, even though version 24 was included. That way we can swap it out later as part of an animation fix, etc. So let's go ahead and pull in Alembic version 23. Spacebar F to focus. And this character is rather large. The next step that you want to do is you want to scale this character down to be in your world. To give you an example of problems that can occur if you do not scale it, I have included two movies here. In this video, you will see an example of a character that was not scaled down properly and to the proper size. So you'll see that this is in meters, and this is 1250 meters. This is about the size of a city block. This sim took a very long time to run, but I wanted to have an example of what happens if you use default settings and you do not scale this character to the proper scale. This is a character example of a character that is scaled properly. You'll notice he's only going 10 or 15 meters, or she is only going 10 or 15 meters. And this has been scaled properly, and this is with the default cloth settings on the character. So what is the proper scale? Let's go back to Houdini here, and let's go ahead and bring in a character called Tommy. So if I hit tab and type Tommy, you will see there's some test geometry for a character named Tommy. And if we scale in here, we'll see that this character is very small, about 100 times smaller than our current character. So if we scale down our character with a transform node, this will get us back into the proper ballpark. 0.01, 0.01. So if we look at Tommy and we look at our Buccaneer now, we're in the same ballpark. Next, we want to unpack our Alembic. Drop an unpack node, and this will unpack our geometry. If you look in the geometry spreadsheet, we do not have a path attribute. We are going to need that attribute. So that attribute exists on the Alembic. Go ahead and put a star here. So any attributes in the unpack will be transferred over. And that'll include point, vert, and primitive. So in here you'll see this is relative to the hierarchy that existed inside of Maya, the geom group, the costume group, etc. So we want to keep it because this is how shaders are assigned. So we want to be able to reuse this attribute, and this attribute is called the path attribute. We'll also use this to blast away anything that we don't need. We want to fix our normals, so let's go ahead and drop down a normal node so we can actually see something here without it looking like this. And next, you'll notice that I have a male and a female geometry in here. Let's clear out the male character with a blast node. And you can use an expression using the path attribute inside here to blast away just the male character. So you can say at path. You don't have to put an S in front of this. This is not vex. This is a group expression. Equals, and I think it is male group. We can just call it male group if I remember properly. And this should blow away just the male character. Also included are some low-res pieces of geometry that I created during the skinning process in Maya so that I could transfer envelope and skin weights. We can blow those away later as well, or we can blow them away now. I will wait till later because of the way I'm going to use blast nodes. But one thing I want to do right now is I do want to drop down a null, and I want to call this null ABC in, because later I'm going to want to pull this geometry to export it back out after I wrap deform it. So at this point, let's just go ahead and call this ABC in, so that I know later I can go there. And I usually just color all these nulls black. The next step is to start breaking this geometry up into separate groups so that we can simulate the cloth on the cloak, the shirt, the chest belts, the sword, top shirt, the undershirt, the pants, etc. You're also going to want to break up the buttons to be separate from the shirt so that they can have separate vellum material settings. For this, I'm going to drop down a blast node and I'll connect it up here. And then I will use the path attribute expression. Here you see some examples that I've set up that I've used to break out each piece of geometry. Here we'll be using the undershirt geo shape. Come back over here. Let's just see what undershirt looks like with just the asterisks. Here you can see the low-res geometry is there as well. Let's just remove that by being more strict with what we're removing using the asterisks by adding underscore geo shape. Continue to do this for all your major pieces of geometry. You can hold this down and Alt drag and then modify this slightly. Say undershirt button. And then we'll have the buttons here. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go through and copy the blast node and apply each one of these path expressions so that I can get each piece of geometry broken out so I can modify each one separately inside of vellum. Okay, I'm done. Here you can see I've broken out every piece of geometry into its constituent parts and I've kind of grouped them. And I like to work from the inside geometry toward the outside geometry. So the inside shirt and pants will be over on the left side of my graph and the far right will be the cloak. It's the outermost piece of geometry and you can see that here. And the rightmost groups over here are our collision objects. The boots are going to be separated into two different pieces. One is going to be boot tops here. They're going to flop around a little bit like a piece of thick leather. And the boot bottoms are going to be collision objects because they don't really deform that much and enveloping seem to be okay. So we're going to go ahead and add these to our collision object that we're going to make in the next video. Let's go ahead and save this file in our project. So first I'll set my project to vellum creature setup, file save as, and I'll save this as setup1, setup version 1. Sounds good. Okay, in the next video we will build a collision object out of these three objects right here.